we are mildly interesting guys, and we talk about some stuff. So welcome to the podcast, we call it Joel the Podcast. It's Alex and it's Alex, here for Joel the Podcast. Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast, Joel. We are here a mere week and a half before Thanksgiving.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So not this coming week, but the following week is Thanksgiving.
That's awesome. Right? I know we were just talking about your vacation days, and I was thinking like, man, I don't get vacation days ever, practically, but the week of Thanksgiving, I will have Thursday and Friday off.
That's nice.
It'll be a good short week, which I guess is the week after this week then, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
So if you're listening to this, it's probably not Thanksgiving in a week and a half, because we don't usually release our videos or podcasts in a timely manner, but
maybe it's so many years ahead that it actually is.
Someone's listening to us exactly 1 year from now, and they're like, what a coincidence!
Have you ever done that with like TV shows or other podcasts or something where you're like watching the Halloween special and it's Halloween or something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, usually for most shows I watch them too fast for that to happen.
Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. It'll be like, oh, it's October 21st in the show, and you'll be like, wait, that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's pretty neat.
That's pretty neat. So if you're listening to this podcast and it's a week and a half from Thanksgiving, email us at alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com and tell us what a fun coincidence that is.
Also, let us know what year it is.
Yeah, tell us what year it is.
What year it is when we receive the email, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a dumb thing.
Tell us what year it is anyway.
Yeah. Just so it's not a blank email. That would be no fun. I think it would be a little fun, actually, but it would mostly be no fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking in the email it would say something like, hey, I'm writing to tell you that I listened to your episode that was a week and a half before Thanksgiving, a week and a half before Thanksgiving this year. But anyway, yeah, please.
I was thinking that probably if somebody was emailing us because we told them to email us, probably they would have included why they were emailing us, what we said to cause them to email us. But I just want to make that like explicit right now. If you're ever emailing us for any reason, tell us what we said to get you to email us, because then we'll do that thing more.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we say it so often. We're just going to get someone emailing us and we'll be like, I have no idea which of the 1,000 things we said to email us for this person is emailing us. So please make it clear and do not send us a blank email.
Yeah.
If you send us a blank email, I will Venmo request you 1 cent. All right, we probably should get into it. So here's your weekly reminder that Nathan does not owe me $1. And on to the sports update, which is a little bit depressing this week. But the Eagles have not played since last week. Since our last episode, they are playing in about an hour from now against the Patriots, so they'll probably lose. The Sixers went 2-2 since the last episode, which isn't bad, I guess, but they really should not be going 2-2. They really should be going better than that, because they're supposed to be one of the best teams in the NBA.
Yeah. So
they're 7-5 now, which is really a little bit disappointing. But they've got a lot of new players, playing together for the first time. So hopefully they figure it out.
I was maybe jumping ahead a little bit here to the Purdue sports update, because this is relevant there as well. I was reminded. I've been very suspicious of Purdue's basketball performance to start the season, but I was reminded that last year we started 6-5. Do you remember that? And then we were basically a fluke away from the Final Four.
Yeah, I don't remember that actually, but I have like seen people saying it, so
Right.
yeah, I know that is a good thing to keep in mind. So
Yep.
what you're actually referencing is Purdue has now started the season 1-2 in basketball.
Yep, they're 2-2 now after a really concerning 40-point victory over Chicago State.
I actually didn't see that.
Okay, so first of all, Chicago isn't a state.
I know, right? All these states that are not states, it's really concerning. Like, do people know what the states are?
The second point that's very important to make is Purdue won this game 93-49. But in the first half, the last time I checked the score before putting my phone away and not looking at it anymore, Purdue was actually losing with 5 minutes left in the first half.
Wow.
It was like 27-25 or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was like
I mean, they scored at least like 60 points in the second half.
they genuinely scored nearly 60 points in the second half. You're right.
That's hilarious, especially considering the game before to Marquette, they scored 17 points in the second half.
I don't know how Purdue's going to do this year. They could really disappoint me by, I suppose, not doing that well, even though it's fair to expect them to have a down season after losing maybe one of the best players in Purdue history.
Right. I actually do want to have a fun fact about that. The night Purdue scored 17 in the second half.
Yeah.
Carson Edwards dropped 18 for the Boston Celtics.
Oh,
so
that's such a fun fact.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So he 4 for 5 from 3. So
yeah.
Really showing what he can do, making me even more depressed that he's not on the Sixers.
Yeah, I'm really glad that he is finding success. Obviously, making a bunch of money, but it's depressing that he is doing well while Purdue is struggling so far.
Yeah, so Purdue's got a game next weekend against, I think, Jacksonville State, which is also not a state, but hopefully that should be another easy win.
So
what?
We're 1-0 against fake states.
Yeah.
I can't imagine we would blow that game.
Also, Purdue football did not play this weekend. They had a bye. Yep. But IU lost, so that's always a good thing.
It was much closer than I thought it was going to be.
We don't need to mention that.
Okay.
All that matters is they lost.
They probably won't be ranked. In fact, I bet the AP rankings are out at least. I will go confirm real quickly that they are not ranked, and we can be a little bit happy before remembering that Purdue football plays Wisconsin in Wisconsin next week.
I'm already pretty sure Purdue's going to win that game.
Indiana is not ranked.
That's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, they're the top of the list of others receiving votes.
Okay.
It looks like they just barely missed out, but
suck it, Indiana.
IU sucks. Purdue is about to stun.
Win out. Yep, Purdue's about to win. I mean, we haven't had our yearly spoiler maker game yet.
Right, we've only beat the other bad teams.
So
I have to imagine that this is the perfect. Like Wisconsin, now that here's what's gonna happen. Let me tell you, and when this actually happens, word for word, what I'm saying, I'm gonna wish I had bet money on it or something because it's so perfect. Minnesota lost this week, so yep. Wisconsin, if they win all the rest of their games, will win the Big Ten West and go to the championship game.
Yep.
However, we can ruin that for them immediately the week after they had a chance. And that is exactly what Purdue would do.
Yeah.
This is a guaranteed victory now that I think about it.
That's true. And I just want to put on for the record that I said this 2 weeks ago after they beat Nebraska. I said Purdue's probably just going to win out now and then make a bowl game and get destroyed. So So far, after one game, I'm right. The easiest game of my prediction, but obviously I know they're gonna win at Wisconsin and against IU, and then they're gonna lose their bowl game very badly.
They'll probably have to play like Auburn or somebody again that's actually a good team, but had to play a bunch of other good teams, so their record is bad.
Right. So I also wanted to mention, this is not really related to anything, but I'm watching the Cowboys-Lions game right now, and the Lions are onto their backup quarterback. Matt Stafford is out this week. But on the sideline, I saw him talking with their third-string quarterback, who is none other than David Blau, former Purdue quarterback.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Their third-string quarterback is David Blau.
That's amazing. I didn't realize he was in the NFL.
Yeah, me neither. But I saw him, and I was like, that guy looks kind of familiar. And then I saw the back of his jersey, and I was like, oh, no.
Incredible. Well.
So, yeah. All right. Yeah, we should really start on the movie.
Yeah.
So, as everyone listening to this podcast probably knows, last week we discussed the premise of our movie. And this week we're going to actually flesh out the plot of what happens in the movie. So you want to remind everyone what the premise of our movie is?
Right. So basically what happens is there's this guy that's hiking out in the woods, and he comes across this spherical object that's the size of a small car. And we decided that this time machine was actually... This spherical object was actually a time machine. And it was being guarded by an old man. And also, this old man was the younger man from the future.
Right. But you don't know that at the beginning.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So it turns out that the old guy has traveled back in time to prevent the young guy from becoming the guardian of this time machine. Because once you're the guardian of the time machine, you're like physically bound to it and can't leave or do anything else. You have to just guard the machine.
Right.
So throughout the movie, did we like reveal the full plot, or am I about to say stuff that we
I think we probably revealed the full plot.
All right, so basically what happens, you already know this if you watched last episode. Otherwise, maybe not. Surprise, but
spoiler alert.
maybe spoiler alert. We find out that the old man is the latest in a long line of old men who have failed to convince their younger selves to not become the guardian. And he's been keeping, throughout all of the iterations of versions of himself trying this, he's been keeping a list. We find out that there's this long list of things that the old man has tried. Because it's not as straightforward as just saying like, hey, I'm you from the future, get out of here. Because we decided, I think, that the old man is kind of like a ghost in the past, so he can't like speak or write in the dirt or anything like that. He's got to find some way to communicate to his past self.
Right. So we established that as someone from the future, he cannot physically interact with.
That's right.
With the world in any way, except for things that are also from the future. So when he goes back in time, he brings a supply of food and water so that he won't die. And I guess the time machine then is a special case. It can interact with both the past and the future.
Right. Which makes sense.
Right. So that's our premise. So why don't we get started? So first of all, we need a name for the main character.
Obviously, he should be named Joel.
I think Joel is an appropriate name.
All right.
So we can refer to them as old Joel and young Joel, even though in the movie that won't be clear until later on.
Right. Like half through when we do the first big reveal, yeah.
Right. So the movie opens on young Joel hiking through the woods. We could easily just have like the open, like, you know how some movies like have an opening credits kind of where they, show, people's names over different sceneries or whatever.
Yeah.
So we could easily do that with the different scenes of him hiking through the woods.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. He's just kind of like going. He's like going on a trail, and then like as the credits part kind of comes to an end, he like decides to forage off the trail for a little bit or something like that. Like he's curious. Maybe he sees something or like wants to go investigate.
He stops for like a break.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and he notices something weird, and he goes to investigate, and he comes across the clearing with this small car-sized metallic thing, and then cut to the title screen, which is, we haven't named it yet, but it'll be a cool sounding name, like epic music playing. And then just cuts right back. So he sees the time machine, he walks up to it, walks around the sides, like looking at it in wonder and confusion.
Right.
And then he notices the old guy sitting on a rock. What?
Maybe this is a bit of like unnecessary detail, but the way I'm picturing this is he's like, the camera's like over his shoulder, he's like reaching out to touch it, and then it kind of like swivels around, and you see there's the guy just like appeared right next to him, like,
okay,
you haven't seen the old guy there, and like the camera swivels around, like right as he's about to touch it, he like looks over and jumps back because there's this old guy, and he's like,
yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Right. So. Right. All right, so I guess we kind of got to flesh out what happens at this point. So obviously, basically what happens is he needs to find out it's a time machine. Right? Or maybe he doesn't find out at first.
I think so. What we could do is say, like, at first he's like he thinks this thing belongs to the old guy, right? So he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to like barge in here and just mess with your stuff." But then the old guy is just like staring at him, right? Because he can't interact with him at all or talk or anything. He's just like looking at him angrily. And so young Joel is like trying to figure out, like, sorry, like, who are you? What's this? That sort of stuff. Old Joel can't really like say anything, so he's not interacting at all. And so young Joel's like, all right, fine, I'll just leave. So he leaves, and then like he's like driving home or something, but you can tell that he's still like thinking about it, And
Okay.
so like later that night he comes back and is trying to be all like sneaky and figure out what's going on. And he sees old Joel like open up the time machine and go inside, and sees all like the future-y time machine looking stuff in it. And he's like, "Whoa, I've never seen anything like this. We've got to check this out. We've got to."
Okay, that's an interesting idea. So I feel like we have to make young Joel more aggressive. Otherwise it might be kind of easy to get him to leave. Like, the real struggle is that he is too interested and is obviously refuses to leave and wants to know what it is and how to use it.
Okay.
So, the other thing is, I feel like if this really is old Joel's like, many attempts have happened before this, he wouldn't be dumb enough to ever open the time machine after the guy's been there.
Well, I mean, he would have to go in and get food and
That's
stuff.
true.
Right?
That's true. That's all that. Actually, you know what? That's probably a good way to get him to realize that it's a time machine the first time. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Actually, all right. So why don't we say that's a good right? That's a good way to start it. I feel like maybe Joel should be a little bit more aggressive in the beginning, but I like the idea of him leaving, coming back, and then seeing old Joel open up the time machine.
Yeah. Okay, so how about this then? He's not like aggressive the first time, but once it opens up and he sees what it is, he was being like sneaky at first. Once he sees it, he's like, "Hey!" Like yells out to old Joel, and old Joel realizes that he's screwed up, right?
Right.
So they have this like standoff where young Joel is like demanding that he answer any questions. He's like, can you not speak or something? And like finally old Joel is like, shaking.
I feel like when you see young Joel yell out and old Joel realizes that he's messed up, you just see him mouth the word shit. Like no sound obviously comes out, but
right. Yeah, that'd be super funny if you get like the close up on his face with like young Joel over his shoulders, like slowly turns around.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So.
At this point.
Yeah. So
he should be like demanding answers,
Right, and so that's also a good way of introducing that old Joel can't talk.
Right.
Which was not established before now. He was like, who are you? What is this thing? I saw you go in there. There's all this futuristic stuff in there. What is this? And and old Joel's just still standing there, not saying anything. And young Joel's like, are you deaf? Can you not talk? And old Joel's just like shakes his head and he's like, wait, you can't talk? And old Joel's like, nope. So
he's like, all right, fine. Here, like right in the dirt. Like hands him a stick and it just drops through his hand or something. Firmly grasp it.
Firmly grasp. I feel like he like takes out of his backpack. He has like a pen and paper, and he's like, "Here, just write down." Then the guy, and he still just shakes his head, and then he goes to like try and forcefully put it in his hands, and then it just goes through him, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
So at that point, then here's the question: is he like, "Oh, so you can't stop me"? So he goes to like look around on his own, or is he still trying to like figure out?
Well, definitely at first he's like confused and kind of scared, right? Like this guy's a ghost.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair. He's not just immediately like, "Oh, okay, you're a ghost. That's fine. Right. I'm just gonna keep breaking into your time machine, man."
Right. So he still doesn't know that it's a time machine. So he's like, dude, what? Just tell me what's going on. And, we need a good way for him to inadvertently notice the screen. Oh, yeah. So for all the listeners, we decided that the time machine has like an old school console screen on the outside that it can, write stuff on.
Right.
So we need, like, obviously old Joel would never point out the screen.
Right.
But we need some way for young Joel to actually notice it.
Maybe that's what like opening up means. Like it's not like a shell that opens up. It's got like some cabinets or something that are. So like originally everything was smooth on the outside, but then old Joel had kind of like revealed some of the mechanisms and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So like there's just revealed now is the screen,
Right.
It's like powered on and available now, whereas before it was kind of sealed up.
Right. So what happened is when he realized old Joe was a ghost, he like stumbled backwards a few steps, and then he says like what is this thing? And then the screen prints the answer, and he like notices it now that he's stumbled backwards into view of the screen, and it says like this is a time machine.
Okay. This isn't directly relevant. Well, I mean it is directly relevant. This isn't like what follows here, but here's a new question that I have. Since old Joel can't speak to young Joel, should old Joel be able to hear young Joel? Or maybe it's this like two-way communication barrier.
I mean, I just assumed that he could hear him.
Right.
But it stands to reason that he wouldn't be able to hear him based on our previous logic.
And that would make things more difficult.
Right. The question is, can we actually, like, how to deal with that?
Yeah, we do need a solution at some point. So I don't want to introduce too many complicated things.
Maybe the screen prints out what they both say. So they can talk to each other by looking at the screen and seeing what the other person said.
Wouldn't that negate the whole...
Oh, right. He can't tell him? Yeah, that would negate the whole thing. Maybe old Joel can read lips.
That would make sense. Like maybe the first time he couldn't, but then he realized what the problem must have been, and like taught himself, So like that's one of the notes from the older old Joels to the new old Joel is like you must
learn how to read
lips so that we can do this.
Right. So in the beginning you don't know that he can't hear him, but really he can't hear him. He can just read his lips.
Right. So okay. I guess it doesn't really matter that he can't hear him. Or maybe it does, because like when he has his back turned, he wouldn't be able to.
It's right. It's gotta matter because in the beginning, when young Joel like calls out from the bushes or whatever, there's no way old Joel will be able to hear him.
Right. All right. So old Joel can just hear him. Let's forget about that.
All right. Yeah. Let's just pretend that part of it doesn't exist. So listeners to this podcast, forget you heard anything about that. There's clearly no continuity or logical problems with that.
Retroactively skip ahead to right now, and we're just going to move on.
Yep. So, if we really wanted to put effort in, we could edit that part out.
I mean, I feel like it was still quality content,
Yeah, I feel like this is the type of things people want to hear. The real nitty gritty behind the movie making process. All right, so
yeah.
All right, so skip back forward to again. He sees the screen. It says it's a time machine.
Yeah. And he's like, "So are you from the future or?" Actually,
wait. So before we go any further, one of the things that I thought about having last time that I think I mentioned, I don't know if maybe we should decide whether or not we want to have it, is flashbacks of some kind.
Right.
I'm just not sure what we would flash back to.
I think it might be useful to explain how old Joel came to be here through flashbacks. Like maybe we see the very first time.
The very first time of young Joel finding the time machine?
Yeah, and there's no old Joel. I think this was one of the things we may have talked about last week also.
Yeah. So, right. So the flashback is just to the events. Okay, so here's actually I thought of a second option. So that's a good one. We could have a flashback to when old Joel a flashback to when young Joel the first time, right? So it
Right.
flashes back to different parts throughout his life that led up to him taking this hike,
Yeah.
which would be good because it would give you some background on, who Joel actually is. Um, the other option I'm thinking about is you could flash back. I don't know if it's really a flash back or a flash forward, but to the events or what led up to old Joel actually taking the time machine back in time to the current time. So
Yeah, I think we definitely see that.
you see like him collecting food and stuff, and you see like him like looking around at the time machine trying to figure out how it works.
And like finding the list of the old Joels.
I don't know about that because the thing is, that gives away that it's a time loop, which you don't want to give
Oh, you're
away
talking
yet.
about like in this stage of it so far.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All
So
right.
like the advantage of doing that is it at least answers some of the questions like actually it doesn't really answer any questions. Yeah, we should probably just flash back to young Joel's first time.
Yeah.
So so that's better. So and then those series of flashbacks throughout the movie lead up to the realization that it's the same Joel. Like it's the same guy.
Yeah.
So so right, so okay, so Joel sees the time machine screen say this is a time machine. His eyes widen and then it just flashes back to like a normal scene of him like eating breakfast or something.
Okay.
And obviously as the viewer, I don't really okay, so actually we should decide what happens in the flashbacks.
Okay. So the story we need to tell is basically old Joel when he was young found this time machine.
See, the thing is, we really don't need to do the flashbacks to tell that story. We can just say that if that's all we wanted to accomplish. I feel like we need the audience to start getting emotionally invested in Joel as a character. So we need to show, like, what the stakes are, basically.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Sort of, yeah. I don't maybe this isn't exactly what you mean, but I'm wondering if we should show some motivation for Joel to want to use a time machine.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like, I mean, obviously he shouldn't like know that that's what he wants, but like once he's presented the option, he's clearly has an objective.
Okay, right. So here's what it is. Basically, Joel had a great life and then something traumatic happened, like his wife died in a car accident or something, or his
Yeah.
kid died in a car accident, and he
Both.
wants to go back. What?
Also
Or both?
his dog.
Also his dog.
And he comes home and his house just is on fire.
It doesn't make any sense, but I want to see just like a narrated scene where he's like, he's like so emotional, like my wife was in that car and my son. It was so sad. Oh, and also my dog. And I could not bear it. Like right. Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. That is a good idea. So you flash back to him eating dinner with his family or something. And you can see that he and his family, they love each other. He and his wife have a small child.
Yeah.
Great family dynamic. All of them are very likable. And then, you see the wife and son, like she says, okay, I'm going to go take Timmy to his, I don't know, what's something a small child does. T-ball game.
Sure.
Um,
And he's like, all right, I'll meet you there in a little bit. Because, like, obviously he would go to his T-ball game if they're in a great,
right.
family situation.
Maybe Okay, maybe it just cuts to them at the. Okay, what I'm thinking is that it makes more sense to like do the accident in the dark.
Right.
So
Okay.
somehow see him go to the T-ball game, and you see them like going out to ice cream or something after. But then for some reason he has like a separate car because he has to go, I don't know, do something else.
So maybe he just like meets up with some like sees another dad at the ice cream place or something, and they're like talking for a bit, and his wife is like, "Hey, we gotta take Joel Jr. home to go to bed now," and he's like, "Oh, yeah, go on ahead. I'll catch up with my buddy Greg here, and then we'll." He can drop me off, and Greg's like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you a ride home later, no problem."
Yeah. Yeah, so he's like, "Oh, Greg, I'm so sorry, but I have to go." And he's like, "I can give you a ride home." He's like, "Oh, are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And he's like, "All right, you guys go. I'll be home a little later." Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So
I think that this sequence that we're describing should be split up over a couple of flashbacks.
that's sure. Yeah.
So you see like good family dynamic first, and then like T-ball up to that point second, and then there's a third one where it's like he's talking with Greg or something. He gets dropped off at home, and there's like a police car in the driveway.
I think it should be a slight modification. I think it should be T-ball up until he says, "Let's go get some ice cream."
Okay.
And then ice cream up until he gets home and there's a police car.
Okay. Sure.
So, all right. So he sees it's a time machine, flashback, the whole dinner. All right, go get ready for T-ball, son. He and his wife are like, oh, he's so cute or whatever. It cuts back to him, and then we cut back to the present. So he's looking at the time machine.
So like internally, he's like, I've got to use this now.
Right. Well, see, the thing is, we didn't actually show anything yet that would indicate that. Like, we know that his kids died, but the audience doesn't know that. They just saw him and his loving family. So
maybe we need to work on the timing of what we reveal then, because definitely as soon as he figures it out, he should want to use it.
Yeah, no, we can still do that, but we just can't, like, it can't be. Yeah, we can still do that, I think.
Okay.
It's okay if the audience doesn't know why he's so eager to use it yet. Although any savvy moviegoer watching this movie probably already gets that his family died.
Yeah, we're not like coming up with complicated plots here.
I mean, it is a somewhat complicated plot. It's just a basic plot wrapped into a complicated plot.
Right.
Right. So.
Which is good, because I think you start to expect to see that it's like, oh, he's gonna go back in time to save his
family,
but like his older self. Would it make sense then for his older self to stop him from doing that?
Okay, maybe. Oh yeah. So the thing is, his older self he doesn't know it yet, but his older self knows that you can't change the past. You're just a ghost once you go back in time. So his older self knows, just give up on this, move on with your life. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right. Like, go live a life now. Don't get trapped.
Right. In this. So if you're watching the movie for the first time. Right. So if you're watching the movie for the first time, you're probably kind of seeing, okay, I kind of see where this is going, but we're just going to throw you for a loop. All right. So, get it? For a loop? All right. So.
That should definitely be in the title.
No. The thing is, the title cannot give anything away.
Okay. No, yeah, you're right.
Like, the title can have something to do with time. We need a good time pun. Maybe time and again or something like that. I don't know if that gives away too much. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll have to think about it, because that, like, the The ones that immediately come to mind are like the super cheesy ones, in my opinion. I think we need,
A serious one.
yeah, a
All
little
right.
bit of nuance here. But
Right.
anyway,
So it cuts back to him in the present, and he's like, "Holy shit!" And he seems to basically forget about old Joel for a second. Like he's completely
yeah,
focused on the time machine,
right.
and he's like, "Is this really a time machine?" And this screen prints, "Yes, it is." He's like, "Okay, all right. So I think we need something to maybe slow down a little bit because." The next logical thing for him to do is to just say, "How do I use it?" And then for it to tell him, "You have to be the Guardian." I think we need old Joel to intervene somehow here.
Okay, how about this? He says, "How do I use it?" It says, "You need to be the Guardian." He says, "How do I become the Guardian?" And it's like, "I already have a Guardian." And he's like, "Okay, this must be old Joel. Old Joel is the Guardian." And so he like is trying to make old Joel tell him how to, or like let him use it somehow. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like,
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it makes sense that the time machine wouldn't just tell him how to be the Guardian
right,
because the time machine wants to protect itself. It's not just going to let anyone who wants, become the Guardian.
right.
The issue is then how. So okay, so what I'm thinking is the issue is then how does he become the Guardian in the end? Because if the time machine's goal is not to just get a new Guardian whenever it wants, then it would probably require like the old Guardian to agree, of course, which old Joel would never agree.
Right.
So
So
maybe,
I think the second option there is if the old Guardian dies.
yeah, that's probably it. So the where this is going is he basically just like its event ends up camping out there
Yeah.
with old Joel, waiting for old Joel to run out of supplies and die, basically.
That's
See,
not
but
very exciting.
well, the thing is, the whole time during that, old Joel is trying to convince him to leave. It's not like they're just doing nothing.
Right. Here's something that I think we need to address. Why? Okay, I don't think I need to ask this question because I sort of have an answer. Old Joel has to come back to the present to stop young Joel because the time machine doesn't actually like appear and disappear when it's changes times. It's kind of like this gateway that's always there, you know?
So the
So
time
like,
machine can't move?
yes, because otherwise I think the solution would just be once old Joel is the Guardian, just don't go back in time to stop young Joel from becoming the Guardian. Because the time machine would have already wouldn't be there.
We're getting into time paradoxes again. If old
Yeah.
Joel doesn't go back in time to stop himself from becoming the Guardian, then he just is the Guardian.
Right. So when okay. Right.
I also thought of another flaw.
um
I thought of another flaw, which is if old Joel realizes that he can't change the past and save his family, then why is he trying to change the past and save himself?
hmm.
Maybe he tried over and over again to save his family, but failed. And now he's realized that that's futile, so he's trying the next best thing, which is to, save his past self, I mean.
Okay, so do you think he's like unable to save Maybe the time machine. So he clearly can't pick where the time machine goes, right?
Time
Otherwise,
What do you mean by where? The time machine can't move. We just said that.
right. So like when he goes back in time to save his family, it takes him to that spot. And when he like tries to go to where his family was to save them, we already have discussed this. He can't leave the area.
Right.
So in the past, he's restricted. I don't think that's actually an issue.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Well,
I forgot that he couldn't. I forgot that he couldn't leave.
Right. So I think we are in agreement that he probably tried as many things as he could think of to leave the area and save his family, but eventually he realizes that he just needs to stay in the area and wait for his past self to come around
Right.
to at least free himself.
Or maybe, actually, probably what happened the first time is he tried to leave, couldn't, and then was just sitting around moping, and he forgot that his past self was going to come up to the time machine.
Right.
And at that point, he didn't look like old Joel. He looked like young Joel because he had just been back in time for like a few months at the most. We haven't really discussed how long in between his family dying and him finding the time machine, but
Right.
he would still look like young Joel at that point.
Right. Based on the loop, I guess there's really only a few years at most, right, between.
Right. So it has to be what it has to be is every single time it takes him many years to figure out how to use the time machine.
Yeah.
So that he looks like old Joel by the time young Joel comes back.
Yes. That's it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So all right. So okay, so back to the actual current point in the story that we are.
Difficult.
So he says, "How do I use it? You have to become the guardian."
Right.
No, it doesn't say you have to become the guardian. It says only the guardian and owner can use this time machine.
Right.
Which honestly, we could do a whole sequel about the owner, but that's another story.
Right.
So he says, "Well, how do I become the guardian?" And the guy goes, and the time she says, "I already have the guardian." And you could see him be like, "What?" for a second, then slowly realize as he looks at old Joel that old Joel is the guardian.
Yeah. So then he's got to try and convince old Joel to allow him to use the time machine.
Right.
And he's like, "You don't understand. I need to use this." He can't just come out and say like I'm trying to save my family, because presumably at this point we haven't
Right. So he
revealed that bit of the flashback yet, right?
Right. So he goes up to old Joel and says, "You got to let me use this time machine." Maybe only one person can use the time machine. Because what I'm thinking is, if we just let him plead with old Joel,
Yeah.
then it's going to become obvious. It's either going to become obvious quickly that his family died, or it's not going to be realistic because he's not going to be pleading hard enough.
Right.
So he basically has to ask him, and then I'm thinking maybe old Joel somehow indicates that only one person can use the time machine. That way he can't just convince old Joel to use the time machine. He has to, but he still can convince old Joel to let him become the guardian. Except he doesn't know that yet, so that's okay.
Okay.
So old Joel has to like hold up like one finger, like only one person can use it.
Yeah.
Except he doesn't quite get it. He's like, one what? He's like, and he points at the time machine. One time machine. I wonder how he would even indicate only one person can use it.
This is going to be kind of tricky, I think, because we do want it to be like, we want to show like a struggle in communication, but we don't want to just be sitting there while
Clueless.
they like play charades with each other, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like we can have a little bit of confusion and then he just figures it out. Like one what? One person, one time machine, or one time machine, one person, and then Joel's like nods and he's like, only
Yeah.
one person can use it.
Yeah,
He's like,
I think he does have to like figure out the rules pretty quickly. Like I think we have to kind of move this first bit along a little bit quicker than we may have been thinking, honestly.
Right.
I don't think there's so many like events going on here.
No, I agree. And keep in mind, I really don't think the first bit is that long yet. Like, basically all that's happened is he's discovered the time machine, discovered that it's a time machine, and discovered that Joel is the Guardian.
Yeah, we can probably like stretch that to 15 minutes or something, you know?
Right. And I agree that this doesn't really need to be that long.
Yeah.
So old Joel. All right, so what we need is some way for young Joel to find out that the only two ways to become the Guardian are the current Guardian agreeing or the current Guardian dying.
Right.
How can we do that? Because it can't just be that he asks the time machine, because he already asked the time machine how he becomes the Guardian, and the time machine just said, I already have a Guardian. But definitely there's no way old Joel would tell him that. I guess it's got to be the time machine.
I think it does have to be the time machine. I think he needs to like figure out how to use it a little bit first. Right?
So maybe the first time he doesn't say, how do I become the Guardian? He says, well, who's the Guardian?
Okay. Yeah, all right. I can see that.
And then the time machine says something like, the Guardian is nearby, or something like that.
Sure.
Right. So the Guardian. Right. Okay. So after we go through that whole part, then he asks the time machine, how do I become the Guardian? So he asks Joel, how do I become the Guardian? And old Joel just, stands there silently and doesn't say anything. And then he goes to the time machine, how do I become the Guardian?
Yeah.
And the time machine says, you can only I'm trying to think of a good way to word it, but it doesn't really matter. Basically, it says either the old Guardian has to die or the old Guardian has to pass on guardianship.
It should say like the current Guardian can make you the Guardian, or you can be the Guardian if there is no Guardian. And then he's got to kind of, I think, figure out on his own then that means that if the old Guardian dies, he can become the Guardian.
Right.
Should he try and is he like desperate enough to try and kill old Joel, or like, I mean, obviously he can't based on what we've come up with, but like, should he try that?
Well, he already knows he can't because he already knows Joel's a ghost.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm thinking about his character more than the rules, like, so if there was this person who was in the situation that like all he has to do is kill this guy, it may be tricky, but then he can go back into the past and save his entire family, or so he thinks.
Right. So
would he try? Like, should we devote a little bit of time to him like scheming to kill old Joel?
So I feel like what he would think about it. Well, okay. Character-wise,
Yeah.
he would think about it and agonize over it for a while and probably eventually try it while feeling awful the whole time.
Okay.
But I really don't think it makes sense for him to try it in the movie because he already knows that Joel can't be touched.
What do you mean not try it in the movie?
Like, in the actual plot, I don't think it makes sense for him to attempt to kill Joel because he already knows that he can't touch Joel.
Yeah. I guess the question, maybe, I don't know, maybe we're just kind of like disagreeing about the actual like small details here. Maybe it's not that big a deal, honestly. I'm just wondering if that should be like a plot point at all. I don't know how it would. Clearly, it wouldn't work, right?
I wouldn't have a problem with it being a plot point, but I just don't see how we would make that work. Like, you would have to show some, like, him buying, like, a gun or something. But I just don't think it makes sense for him to do that after knowing that Joel can't be touched.
Okay.
Old Joel can't be touched.
Sure.
So, alright, so he, I guess we're getting a little bit bogged down in the details. He basically, especially since we're running low on time. So basically what happens is he realizes that he can't become the Guardian unless Joel dies or allows him. So he, we still need some way for him to not just reveal that his family's dead, though.
Well, I mean, I think that can happen fairly quickly too, right? Like, we want that to come out in the first half before we find out that old Joel is just old Joel.
Yes, I agree. The problem is we're basically having like 5 to 10 minutes of actual current movie followed by 15-minute flashback.
Uh-huh.
And then 5 more minutes of movie followed by 10 more minutes of flashback. It just seemed, I guess, probably fine. As long as... maybe we just need to cut down on how many flashbacks it takes to reveal the information.
Yeah.
Like, it comes out in the second flashback that his family's dead, and then on the third flashback, you start seeing what happened after his family died.
Okay.
So right, so I guess at this point we really need to reveal the information in the second flashback, which is from the ice cream to the police car.
Right. We see that his family has died, and that would be his motivation. And then, so now we're kind of on Joel's side, right? To get the time machine back, because we still don't, or the audience still doesn't know that the old guy is just old Joel.
Yes. And the audience also doesn't know, like, all the reasons why you wouldn't want to become the Guardian, like not being able to leave.
Right.
Although some in the audience may have picked up on the whole ghost part. All right, so
a weird time travel thing, I think, but
what?
I'm thinking of that more as like a weird time travel quirk more than like you can't interact with your past self. I don't know.
I'm just thinking that some audience members might be thinking, oh, even if he goes back, he won't be able to talk or interact with anything.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, I was confused about what you meant by that last part then. All right, yeah. We're good.
Right. So what happens next is the flashback. You see the thing. You see him come to start pleading with Joel. Joel to let him. Old Joel just shakes his head over and over again and like points away. I feel like now at this point we have to discuss what old Joel actually tries to get him to leave.
Right. Which is a good question, right? Because as far as we know, there's like nothing that he could really do.
Yeah. That's right. Like, what?
Here's a thought that's so old Joel has been concerned about revealing that he is himself from the future because that seems like a bad thing to do time travel wise, right? Like, you know,
I feel like we went to great lengths to make it so he couldn't reveal that.
I think we did, but that seems to be the answer to me, right? Is he's got to realize that he is I get okay. We don't have to do it that way. This is weird. So I think we're kind of in agreement based on all of that the answer is he's got to realize that that's himself, right?
Young Joel?
Young Joel has to realize that old Joel is old Joel.
Oh, I mean, eventually, yes. I'm thinking, though, that doesn't necessarily need to happen soon or even before old Joel dies. Like, it could be that young Joel waits out old Joel dies. See, that doesn't make sense either. He can't just wait him out because old Joel has to have brought enough food. That has to be like one of the first things he realized.
Right.
Is that he can't just... He has to bring enough food to wait him out. Maybe... No, that doesn't make sense.
Maybe you're traveling. Maybe you have a limited amount of time that you can spend in the past.
That's a good idea.
So, like, I don't... for example, like, maybe if you're there for a week, you get, like, irreversibly sick, right? Or something like that. And then that slowly... Not slow... Like, okay, so at first you're, like, slowly getting sick. But then that starts to accelerate, and, like, the longer and longer you're there, you'll start... Like, eventually, basically, it'll just, like, kill you.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
I think we need some sort of time limit like that.
That makes sense. So old Joel... Okay, so I honestly think that if we can get old Joel to try one gimmick or one thing to get young Joel to leave every single time, that's enough.
Right, I agree.
So the question is, what is anything he can try? Like, I guess one time he can try and convince young Joel that he is young Joel. Like that they're the same person.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work. What else can he do?
Should this be different ways of trying to convince him that they're the same person, or different ways for him to convince him to leave?
Different ways for him to convince him to leave.
Okay. So
which can include multiple ways of him trying to convince him that they're the same person.
Right, but it's not just that, is what you're saying.
Right.
I think that's fair. So he can try, like...
Maybe he tries to scare him somehow. I mean, he's got to try... There's got to be one time where he just tries doing nothing. He just lays there or sits there or something and never does anything. That obviously doesn't work.
And then young Joel young Joel takes over. So maybe he's trying to like communicate with him in different ways, like trying to come up with different things that he can do.
Right.
Like he obviously can interact with some stuff. Like his food from the future.
Oh. He has a pen and paper. That's way too cheap.
He just brings back a pen and paper?
Yeah, like, we've already seen young Joel having a pen and paper. There's no reason for old Joel not to also have that.
Right. Okay, so I feel like they should just write back and forth, right? Or like old Joel should just write.
Yeah, old Joel should just write. So the thing is, up until this point, there's no real reason for old Joel to actually use it, because he's trying to keep young Joel from actually getting information. But once young Joel figures out what the deal is, then he brings it out.
Okay.
So I guess there's enough ways for us to show in like various montages or whatever that he tries. What we really need is some way that's good for this first attempt. Well, it's not really the first attempt, but the first attempt that the audience sees that doesn't immediately give away that he's Joel.
Right. Maybe this is the opportunity to learn about what being the Guardian means. So the old Joel writes to him, "You don't want to be the Guardian. The Guardian is stuck with the time machine."
Okay, yeah, we've hit another snag. It's way too easy for old Joel to just say, "The Guardian can never leave, so it's pointless for you to, like, you won't ever be able to save your family. Just look," and then he tries to walk away, and young Joel sees that he can't. Maybe whenever old Joel tries to walk away and gets teleported back to next to it, it just looks to everyone else like he's just walking around in circles around the time machine.
Okay.
Like, I'm honestly... We need some way for him to not just say, "You can't leave, so it's pointless to become the Guardian."
Right. It's really difficult because old Joel has to know exactly what young Joel wants, so he should be able to like give very targeted information.
Right.
To young Joel, but we don't want that right away because that's less good for the plot.
Exactly.
This is a
Damn it. This is tough. All right. Well, honestly, we're at an hour 8. Maybe we should just tackle this the next episode.
Yeah, I almost said spend some time thinking about this so that we can be more prepared for next time, but that's not going to happen.
That's a joke.
I guess we'll just wing it again next time.
Yep.
But yeah, this was some interesting progress. Maybe we'll just have a little mini series here of us trying to get through this movie.
This singular movie. Honestly, this is a pretty clever idea. There's just too many problems with it.
Right. It's really difficult to like come up with wrong answers because the right answer is so obvious and basically like doesn't cause any problems.
Right.
We need to make it cause problems.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So, I guess maybe we want to not have an episode. Maybe we could.
Huh?
We'll discuss it off the air.
Okay.
Anyway, I was just thinking about our Thanksgiving schedule.
Oh, that's right.
So, all right. So I guess thanks for listening, everyone. Sorry that we didn't get very far.
I think we had a lot of good discussion. We didn't get very far in the movie, but we did tackle a lot of issues.
We did flesh out a lot, and let's remember next week to re-listen to this episode so we're not forgetting everything that we said in this episode.
Absolutely.
All right. So
if I happen to upload this, or at least the last one or something, before next week, and you have listened to it and have some ideas that would help us, please email us.
Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast@gmail.com.
It's funny, we were so focused on like actual content this week that's only the second time we made that joke.
Honestly,
the whole podcast.
Honestly, I want to know how interesting this was. Like, we really did not make very many jokes. So it might have been really bad, but I thought our content was at least interesting, so it might have been decent. So
it was interesting to me. I wouldn't be able to judge it because I would be listening to this still trying to think of answers to our questions.
Exactly. That's why we need people to email us at alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com and tell us whether this type of episode is actually good or it's just we're losing all of our redeeming qualities that we get with humor.
Right.
So
I think if we had like an existing audience that was interested in us, this sort of content would be good because they would want to like interact with us about what we're doing here, but like maybe this isn't good content for growing an audience, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the bottom line is if you're not already in love with us, don't listen to this episode. And I guess I know it's really
the end of the episode.
It's the end of the episode, so it's really not that helpful, but if you're still listening here and you're not liking this podcast, just go listen to some of our other episodes. Maybe you'll get lucky and listen to one of the good ones. And then once you've established your fandom for us, then come back and re-listen to this one.
Right.
So
that did give me a title for this episode, though. It's going to be called "If you don't already like us, don't listen to this one."
I think that's less funny. It should just be "Don't listen to this episode."
But then the people that like us aren't going to listen to it either.
Okay, realistically, if you liked listening to a podcast and you listened to it regularly, and they came out with an episode that said "Don't listen to this episode," would you not listen to it?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Yep.
Actually, there's a Donkey video where in the middle of the video, he's like, okay, everybody, stop watching right now. No one should watch. It's one of the videos where he's talking about the original videos he made when he was younger.
Oh, I think I've seen that one, yeah.
And he's like, no one should ever view this video. And then proceeds to play the video, so.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, the title's up to you.
Decided.
Obviously, what?
It's decided.
Yep. I mean, obviously, you're way better at coming up with titles, so if you think of something better, definitely do that. But anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this has been Joel.